let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down a truly mind-blowing article from PokéSats. It connects the highest-grossing media franchise in human history with the world's first sovereign cryptocurrency. I know, it sounds like a completely random pairing, right? But trust me, the parallels we're going to look at are absolutely wild.
So, what do the most successful video game franchise and the very first cryptocurrency actually have in common? Well, the answer involves a shared first name, a strikingly similar creator profile, and just a massive, almost incomprehensible valuation of the assets they created. We're talking about two of the most consequential builders in modern digital culture. They never met, but their creations, they share the exact same structural DNA.
Meet our two consequential builders, both named Satoshi. First up, we've got Satoshi Tajiri. He's a public figure, lives in Tokyo, runs a massively successful game studio. And then there's Satoshi Nakamoto, a pseudonym for someone who basically dropped an 8-page PDF onto a cryptography mailing list back in late 2008, ran a network for a couple of years, and then completely vanished. Literally just disappeared, leaving behind roughly 1 million untouched Bitcoin.
To really grasp the sheer scale of what these two guys built, think about this. Satoshi Tajiri's creation, Pokémon, has generated a staggering $95 billion in lifetime revenue. And that's across everything: video games, trading cards, the anime, all the merch. It is literally the highest-grossing media franchise in human history.
Meanwhile, Satoshi Nakamoto's creation, Bitcoin, currently sits at an astonishing $1.5 trillion market cap. Trillion with a T. Two absolute financial titans, both born from the minds of a Satoshi. So let's look at how both of these empires actually got off the ground.
Part 1. The Bug Catcher and the Link Cable. Let's travel back to 1960s Tokyo and see how this all starts. We start with young Satoshi Tajiri, a kid known around his neighborhood as Dr. Bug. He was obsessed with hunting beetles in the woods. But for him, the real magic wasn't just catching them. It was the whole social ritual of trading his catches with his friends. The collection was kind of pointless if it just sat in a jar on a shelf. But as Tokyo expanded, his childhood hunting grounds were literally paved over. The analog world was literally erasing his hobby. That loss drove him to find a way to preserve that social ritual of trading scarce things, but in a digital format, something that suburban development couldn't bulldoze.
And then it hit him. When Tajiri saw the Nintendo Game Boy's link cable in 1990, he had a massive epiphany. He didn't just see a cable for playing head-to-head Tetris. He later said he literally envisioned bugs crawling back and forth across that wire. He saw a foolproof medium for his indestructible digital bugs. The cable was the connective tissue between two collectors, just like swapping jars back when he was a kid.
All right, part 2, the cryptographer and the blockchain. Let's jump ahead to our second creator.
12 years later, our second Satoshi posts a white paper that completely solves the double spending problem for digital money. And on January 3, 2009, Nakamoto embeds this exact headline from the Times right into the very first Bitcoin block. It's a brilliant move because it tells you everything about his motivation. He was watching the traditional fiat system bail out the exact same banks that broke the economy, completely diluting the savings of everyday people. He wanted to build something entirely different.
So, his response? A protocol with a hard cap. 21 million coins written directly into the source code as a strict mathematical constraint. No central bank can ever step in and change those rules. Right when physical monetary trust was failing, being paved over by bailouts, much like Tajiri's childhood forests, Nakamoto built this incredibly durable digital home for monetary trust, all secured by a blockchain.
Section 3. 6 Years of Doubt. This is where the parallel between these two creators gets really uncanny.
You know, things that truly compound require a long, quiet period where they frankly look pretty stupid to the outside world. Tajiri spent 6 grueling years grinding away on his game. His studio, Game Freak, almost went completely under. He was living with his parents, not paying himself a dime, and even taking contract jobs to make games for Nintendo's bitter rival Sega just to keep the lights on. 6 full years of basically everyone telling him this idea was never going to work until Pokémon finally shipped in 1996.
And mirroring this perfectly, Nakamoto and his early adopters, like the legendary cryptographer Hal Finney, spent their own 6-year crucible quietly patching bugs, all while the mainstream financial press literally laughed it off as a scam or just magic internet money. Tragically, Finney passed away in 2014, never even getting to see a single Bitcoin trade for more than a few $100s. But they held on. They held on through those tough, lonely years.
To really highlight just how lonely and unvalued it was early on, think about the famous pizza story. In May 2010, a programmer spent 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 Papa John's pizzas. Today, that amount is worth somewhere around $800 million. Let that sink in. $800 million for some pizza. It's just a staggering reminder of how incredibly cheap belief was during those 6 years of doubt.
Which brings us to Section 4, the name and the math. This is where we dive into the linguistic and mathematical synchronicities that the PokéSats article argues bind these two worlds together so perfectly.
First off, let's look at the name itself. In Japanese, the name Satoshi translates to wise one, clear thinking, or enlightened. The source article points out that this name feels reserved for someone who sees what everyone else completely misses. Tajiri saw an entire vibrant universe hiding inside a simple link cable. And Nakamoto? He saw a sovereign monetary network inside a cryptographic puzzle that academics had completely given up on.
Okay, this is where it gets kind of spooky. If you run the letters of Satoshi through Pythagorean numerology, the values sum to 28. You reduce that and you get 10. Reduce the 10 and you get 1. And 1 is the universal number of origin, the founder, the absolute first mover, which is exactly what both of these creators were. But it's actually those intermediate numbers that hide a massive secret.
The author highlights this incredibly wild mathematical quirk. Those intermediate numerology numbers for Satoshi are 10 and 8. That exactly matches the literal, hard-coded math of Bitcoin itself. 1 Bitcoin equals 10 to the power of 8 of its smallest units. It's almost like the name mathematically encodes the exact structure of the currency. I mean, what are the odds?
And speaking of that smallest unit, it's literally called a Satoshi. It's the micro unit you'd use to pay for everyday things at internet scale. Interestingly enough, Nakamoto didn't even name it this himself. The community proposed it back in 2010 as a quiet, respectful tribute to the author, who had already started to fade away into total anonymity.
This leads to such a beautiful symmetry. Over in Japan, the main protagonist of the Pokémon anime, who most of us know as Ash Ketchum, is canonically named Satoshi, named openly after Tajiri himself. So that means in both of these massive universes, the smallest, indivisible unit that basically carries the entire system on its back shares the creator's name.
And let's not forget, both Satoshis launched their respective universes with a strictly capped digital scarcity right from day one. For Tajiri, it was the original 151 Pokémon. For Nakamoto, it was the famous 21 million coins. Two incredible global phenomenons built entirely on the concept of capped digital scarcity.
Section 5. The PokéSats thesis. This brings us to the core argument of the source material we're exploring today, and it explains why this platform actually chooses to price graded Pokémon cards in Bitcoin.
The PokéSats article argues that both of these systems are, at their core, durable digital homes for scarce things. Whether it's Bitcoin operating under the hood or a holographic Charizard sitting on a shelf, both serve to protect value that the analog world just keeps trying to pave over or dilute. Furthermore, the founders of both systems intentionally stepped back from the very things they built, ensuring those creations could decentralize and ultimately outlast them. The goal? To hold on to these assets for the long haul.
So, this crucial takeaway leaves us with one final lingering question. Why does the name Satoshi keep showing up at the origin of modern scarcity? Are the shared name, the bizarre mathematical quirks, the exact same 6 years of crushing doubt, and the strict capped supplies just one massive, unbelievable historical coincidence? Or is there a deeper reason this specific name sits at the absolute foundation of modern digital preservation? It's a fascinating perspective, and honestly, it completely changes how you look at the pop culture and the financial technology we interact with every single day. Let that sink in for a bit.